Hello, football fans, and welcome to Part B, the away leg of our chat with former Socceroo and Sydney FC legend Alex Brosque. Please make sure you give us a follow on Instagram, like and share our content, and also please subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the away leg Part B of our chat with Alex Brosque. So if you haven't checked out the home leg, please make sure you go back and check that out as this episode follows straight on. We did finish that episode just bringing to the end of Alex's stint, his first stint at Sydney FC, and we pick up here with the transfer news around Shimizu S-Pulse coming in to make a bid for him to go and play in Japan. Enjoy. And then Shimizu coming. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me how that move came about? Because Sydney attempted to block the transfer because they felt that they'd approached you without the club's permission. Mm-hmm. Can you shed some light around there? Because, I don't know, I think obviously everyone wants to go overseas. It's a great opportunity, but for the club to then try and stop that, how did that also make you feel? Not too bad.
No.
Coming back. But
no, and obviously... Look, at the end of so we went to the court of arbitration on it because there was it was a weird situation. So I had re-signed with Sydney for another 2 or 3 years, I think, but that contract didn't take effect immediately. So I had to finish that season before the new one came in. So in this current season that I was in, I had a clause in my contract that if the club was offered a certain transfer fee, that they had to release me. But their argument was that, well, you signed a new deal, right? So where there is no transfer fee clause in it. But it, again, because it hadn't taken effect yet, we were sort of still leaning on that.
So was there a time overlap with those contracts? Like, was that one was about to end, the next one starting, or did they feel as you signed that new deal, it's effective immediately?
Well, that was their argument. That, but again, so my salary had increased in the new deal, but they weren't. So, I mean, they obviously weren't paying me that new deal. So it was one of them where I was still sort of governed by that original deal, and there was still 6 months or so left on that deal. Because I remember it happened around December, where obviously my contract was expiring, I think in March or April, which the A-League season finished. But yes, I was approached by... or my agent was approached by Shimizu S-Pulse, and there was another Australian boy playing there at the time, Eddie Bosner, who I guess when that was all taking place and Shimizu were looking at me, recommended, when they spoke to him about me, I remember him saying that he said some good things about me, and they approached my agent. So yes, we went to the court of arbitration with Sydney, and look, when you ask how did it make me feel, I guess I was disappointed at the time because I felt like it was a good opportunity. I'd given a lot in my time with Sydney. We just won the competition, and it felt for me, that it was the right time to go, the right time, I guess financially for me to try and secure my future, but also try and sort of push myself and test myself to get back overseas and take that next step and see whether, I could crack it in the J-League. It was obviously a competition back then, and I'd say still is, that's a step above the A-League in terms of quality and speed of play and everything. So I wanted to test myself in there and see whether I could, go well over there. And Sydney were trying to block that, and so I was upset by that whole situation. At the end of the meeting, I think Scott Barlow was there at the time. He got up, shook my hand. He said, Brosque, at the end of the day, mate, no hard feelings. I mean, we're trying to keep you because we want you here. We want you to be a part of our club and what we're trying to build for the future. So I saw it from his point of view, and look, I thanked him. The decision ended up going my way, and I said, look, when I come back, I'm coming back to Sydney, right? So, it was a good chat, and it did end on good terms with the club, even though there was a bit of, arguing and fighting in that lead up to me leaving. I guess, I don't know if we're going into Japan or those next couple of years, but it was a tough start. But, enjoyable in the end.
Yeah. Just before we do, you just mentioned then that you said, when I come back, I'm coming to Sydney. Was that it? You would never go play for another A-League club?
No.
Yeah?
No.
What's the reason behind that? Look, because, football's a funny,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
And money talks and all of that. I get it.
Timing and all these different things. So what was it about Sydney that made you say, this is the only place I want to come back to?
Look, I think it was easy because it was my home club, and I know I started at Queensland Roar and came back again. But if the option was there to have come to Sydney from the beginning, then that's where I would have chosen. And the fact that it was my home club, I love playing here. The fans were great. Like I said, in those initial couple, weeks and that first sort of season, I went to the club off the back of that season with the Roar, and there was a bigger expectation, and I'd failed to live up to that. So the fans were great. They never got on my back and sort of helped me through that period. So there was that connection there with them and the club in general, a club I spent 5 years with, ended up winning a championship with in 2009, 2010. So, yeah, that relationship and bond was there with Sydney from the moment that I left, that there was only going to be one club I was coming back to.
Love that. So we'll go into Japan. Can you tell me, just first of all, what was your family situation moving overseas to Shimizu in Japan? Obviously, Nadia, you had kids, or just Christina then?
Just Christina. So she was born in March 2010. So she would have been 8 months old when we left.
Yeah. And how was that? Was that a factor weighing into a decision to move over? Like, do I take my 8-month-old to a foreign country where we don't speak the language and et cetera, et cetera? Or was it, no, this is what we're doing, it'll be fine? Or, did that weigh into your decision to go or stay?
Not in terms of staying, but just because, like I said, I'd seen so many players do it and knew and understood that, it's something we had to do. So, yes, it'd be difficult and it would have its challenges, but I knew Japan was an incredible country and a safe place to go. So I had no concerns with that. I think for me, there's always that difficult moment for a player going overseas where you've sort of got to concentrate on your football and hit the ground running before, otherwise it gets difficult for you, but also try and set things up for your family in the background, start looking for a place to live, start making those connections of wherever, whether you're going to take them to school or not, or childcare or anything. You need to start putting those things in place for your family to come over. So it was
would the club help you with that? Because
of course,
if I was looking for an apartment to live in Japan, man, I speak Japanese. I had a very little bit from high school. That's about it. The club had people there,
of course,
to help you.
Yeah, at both. I mean, when I went to Belgium, same thing, and in Japan, and they were great. I mean, that whole experience of Japanese people, their culture, such a welcoming and helping culture that it is incredible. And unless you've lived there, I mean, you can go out there on holiday, but unless you've lived there and experienced how incredible they are, it's tough to really understand. I mean, we're good here and we have it good here, but I think just the amount of respect they have towards themselves, their country, people that come and live there, is incredible and something I haven't seen or experienced anywhere else. So they were great for my wife going there and with our young daughter. They were incredible in how much they helped us feel at home as quick as possible. So that transition was in terms of the move and setting things up was quite easy. But yeah, I mean, speaking, reading, understanding Japanese was impossible. So that side of it was tough because in Japan it's difficult. I think here you have your buildings where you can see, okay, that's a shopping mall, that's a restaurant. Whereas in Japan, there's a lot of just buildings where everything's sort of upstairs and you don't know because you can't understand what the sign says. So I was lucky in that sense where I had Eddie Bosner with me, an Australian guy who knew the city inside out. He knew where to go, so he showed us around. So I feel like there was a lot of things, with the club, with Eddie being there, that really helped me settle from the beginning, that just allowed me to deal with what I had to do on the pitch, which was then down to me. And that part didn't go so smooth from the beginning, but ended up going well.
Yeah. And just on I assume the club organises somebody to help you learn some Japanese or something? No.
Well, they give they offer that option to you, but look, I think with foreign players, they ask you there because they understand as well that you may be there for a year or two or whatever. So unless it comes from you to say, listen, I want to learn Japanese. Plus, we had an American coach So
That's my next question.
Yeah.
Would you be learning football specific?
Yeah. I probably would have. Yeah. Under other circumstances, I probably would have. But because my coach was American, funnily enough, it was the locals who had a translator.
I asked us the next question. Was there a translator? But there you go, American coach.
I did have one though, because we needed to. When I was at training, he'd sometimes leave me. He'd help Nadia go and do the shopping, to learn what she needed to go and get, how she needed to ask for things. So we did have a translator.
And you said that did start well there. What was there a certain turning point or something that made it click, or was it just a time thing?
Look, it was a time thing and a bit of a turning point. So I remember going there, and at the time, I can't remember his name. He ended up going from Shimizu S-Pulse to Stuttgart in Germany. I can't remember his name. Anyway, he had an incredible season, went to Germany. So this guy was a gun, Japanese international. And I had just signed. So from their point of view, I'm coming in to replace this guy, which I wasn't, right? I'm coming because I've been signed and whatever. But that was the feeling from the fans, that I was coming there to replace this guy. And I remember being asked a lot of questions. He's just left. He had an incredible season. He's a winger. You're coming in. How do you feel like you'll go? And look, I answered it like I would any other question. Hopefully I come here and settle quick and do well, right? But went on a pre-season camp, and I remember my first game in pre-season. I just remember going to training, so even before the game, like just the speed that these guys were moving the ball around with and playing. I couldn't tell who was a defender, who was a midfielder, who was a striker. They were all similar, slim, quite, exactly right. And I just thought, man, where do I even fit into this team? Technically they're all incredible. I'm watching the ball just fly around me like I'm not even there. And I just felt like it's going to take me some time to adjust, I think in Australia as well, because we play in summer, so the tempo sometimes is a lot slower than what it could be. I went there in winter, and there's a different feel when you play in winter. You're a lot sharper. There's more of a buzz. So like I said, I went there and just thought, man, I'm out of my depth here. These guys are flying around me. Plus the training as well. It was a pre-season camp. We're training morning, evening. So I wasn't really used to that. And physically, I was sort of finding it hard to keep up with all of that. And then we played a pre-season match in my first game, and I didn't go all that well. And I remember one of the directors, we were at the end of the camp, heading back to our town, and he was speaking to Eddie Bosman. He said something, and keep looking over, but wasn't saying anything to me. And then I asked Eddie. I said, "Oh, what did he say?" He goes, "I was just asking if that's all you've got, basically. Like if there's more to come."
Yeah.
So I told him not to worry, just to leave you alone. You'll be fine, And I was like, "Oh shit," So I was I was a bit worried. I remember going home and just saying to Nadia, "Look, this is just another level for me. I don't know if I'll be able to adjust and keep up and if I'm going to be any good here, basically." So a lot of that sort of doubt was coming into my head. I thought I'd be back in Australia after a couple of months. Ended up playing. So I went through the whole of pre-season, played. Again, I was playing as a winger, right? Which for me, I was never good. Japanese wingers, they get the ball and you give them space. You let them go one-on-one because they're sharp, they can dribble, they're great, they go inside, outside, can deliver great service or cut inside and shoot. That wasn't my game at all. I'm someone who liked to link up with another striker or play with someone alongside me, make runs in behind. That was more my game, right? So I really struggled in pre-season. First game of the season, I played, and we're playing away to the team who'd just come off the back of winning the competition. And I played 60 minutes and got taken off, didn't have a good game at all. And again, just remember thinking, man, this isn't going well, right? So going back to Shimizu or Shizuoka, our town, and training, getting ready for the next game. And we're about to get on the train to go away to wherever we were playing. And that's when the big sort of earthquake hit in Japan. So I was at the train station with Nadia at the time, our little one, and I'd heard all about the fact that Japan has a lot of earthquakes. We were up in a high-rise building, and they told us you'll feel the building sway every now and then, and it's normal. So this was our first experience. We'd only been there for about a month or so, or a bit more, and it was just such an odd experience. I remember being in a restaurant wasn't in a building, I was on land in a restaurant, and everything just started swaying, and just that feeling of it felt like you were on a boat, and just I thought, and I can understand being up high where the building moves, but being on ground and the earth is moving like that, it was such a surreal sort of feeling. But obviously it was bigger than what they normally experience. So I thought it felt off. We couldn't understand what people were saying. People were sort of moving around a bit, frantically, and I just thought this has a weird feel to it. It doesn't feel like your everyday sort of earthquake that they experience. So we ended up getting a cab back to our apartment, and got a phone call from our translator who said, "Look, everything stopped. Something big's happened. Turn on the TV," and that's when you could see footage of the tsunami hitting and everything, and just that whole panic that sort of came in with what was happening, and it was just incredible seeing it, experiencing it. So the league stopped from there. Then you had the whole nuclear power plant situation happening, where it sort of started to worry us with young families. How big is this going to be? Is that thing going to explode? What's going to happen? So we sent our families home, and we stayed there training. And it was sort of as unfortunate circumstance it was, and situation it was, that the league went on a break for about 4 to 6 weeks. So it gave me more time to get used to and adapt to the speed of it. But also my coach, he came to me in that period of training and said, "Look, I want to try you in a different position. I want to put you as a number 8, more of an attacking midfielder. I feel like you'll be better suited there." So in training drills, I wasn't used anymore. I wasn't put out wide. I was played in that midfield role. So as a midfielder, all of a sudden you're getting the bib where you're that link for both sides. So whatever side's got the ball, you're with, right? Which is the best job. Exactly right. Exactly right. But you're always in the middle. You're always getting the ball. So it just, I was able to adapt quite quickly when I was thrown into that, in that position, where just the speed of, I learnt to have to read the game a lot quicker and start thinking 2-3 passes ahead, or what I was going to do with it before I had it, because I knew these guys were so sharp that the moment I was getting it, I was getting tackled. So it just made me have to start thinking, a lot quicker, which I was able to adapt and do, thankfully. And so I moved into more of a midfield role. I had a guy like Shinji Ono playing alongside me as well as the other 8, and he helped me a lot. And again, like I said, so I was able, thankfully, to adjust and adapt to the speed of play there, and ended up enjoying my 2 years.
Yeah. So while you were there as well, there was a fan from Sydney, William Duran. He passed away suddenly. He was one of the founding members of the Cove. And so you were back, was it your off-season? Mm-hmm. You were back and you sat in his seat for a game against the Mariners.
Yeah.
And then you were also involved in moving that seat to the new stadium with it rebuilt. I suppose one of those things where it's probably something you didn't have to do, but you being the person you are, I'm sure you would have jumped at that opportunity to pay your respects and do something that, I suppose would have helped, his friends and his family, etc. So are you in touch with any of his friends or family or anything at the moment? Or how was that experience? I'm sure quite emotional. You're his favourite player as well, I believe.
Apparently so.
Yeah. So how was that experience? And, I'm sure they were super grateful for how you paid your respects. But what was it like sitting in his seat during that game? And just sort of, I suppose, you being on the other side as well. Obviously, there was a real, like I said, emotional feel to that, but also just being in the stand with the Cove. How was it? Because it's something that not many players, and at the time, but like you said, Sydney, your club.
Yeah.
How was that experience for you and those people around you?
Look, it was a strange one. I remember getting the call from the club about it first, and hearing the news and hearing about it and what they wanted me to do. And I think the initial feeling was that I didn't want it to come across as gimmicky or something, that was organised by the club. So I didn't want to disrespect him, his family, by doing that. I was honoured at what they told me, that I was one of his favourite players, and that his family was happy for me to sit in his seat. So I think it was more that I thought if that's something that they want and they're happy for me to do, then of course, I mean, I'd be honoured to sit in his seat. And it was just a surreal sort of moment, one where you looking back at photos of, I can picture it and get back in that moment straight away and remember the feelings of, the players. I remember they came right up to the fence to pay their respects, to him and being there and sharing in that moment with the coach, but getting to sit with them as well. And, seeing what it, I mean, you spoke about at Marconi as a young kid and getting to see us and all that stuff. For me, I was just going to training, right? I didn't realize the effect that you can have on young kids and people, even though when I was a young kid on those backfields of Marconi, the same thing, seeing the players rock up and seeing players sometimes even train on the field next to us because the field was being looked after. It was incredible. And you don't realize when you're there that the effect that you have on people. So sitting in his seat and sitting with the Cove and sharing in that and seeing what they feel for these players and the emotions that they go through in every game just gave an incredible connection for me with them that was great to be a part of, even in those difficult circumstances. But yes, I felt that appreciation from his family as well, and getting to move his seat, into the new stadium as well, was pretty special. And I hadn't seen his family for a long time up until that moment, and a lot of of fans that were there said we haven't been here for a while. Obviously they have families and things happen, and you sort of or move away from Sydney and it gets difficult. But a lot of people that were there on that day hadn't been back in years, so they sort of reunited for that moment. And again, it was special to, I think from the club's point of view, to honour, someone who was there from the beginning, someone who lived and breathed Sydney FC, and then for me to be able to pay that respect to him and to his family as well was awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great to hear that you didn't want it to be that gimmicky sort of. Was it kept under wraps a little bit? Like it wasn't.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah,
that's a great.
There wasn't media or anything done in the lead up to it. It was something that the club said, look, this is what we're doing. And I do remember the media at the time of the game were alerted to it, which is why they sort of filmed me down there. But up until that point, it was kept quite quiet, which I liked.
Yeah, a really great gesture. And I'm sure they were super grateful for how respectfully you did it as well. So back to Shimizu, and then the UAE comes, Dubai.
Al-Ain.
Sorry, Al-Ain. That's right. So go to Al-Ain. I'm assuming a huge financial motivation to go there as well. When you're in Japan, though, you were locked on Socceroos, playing pretty much every week. Were you worried about going there because it was not as well respected league as the J League? Were you worried about your Socceroo ambitions and World Cups coming up and things like that? Was that a big factor in that move? And sort of, what was your decision around that?
It was a difficult decision, but look, one that I knew. I had a lot of conversations with different people, obviously family and people that I cared about, but it was one that I knew. I mean, you spoke about the financial side of it that I had to make because of that. I thought it was still about a year. I went in 2013 and the World Cup was the following year. The Socceroos were going through a difficult period at that moment as well. They copped a couple heavy sort of defeats, and Holger Osik, who was the coach at the time, was sort of on the way out. And I just remember thinking that, look, there was no guarantees that I was going to be in that World Cup squad. Anyway, while it would be fantastic to play in a World Cup, look, I did think at the time I had to put my family and myself first, which is why I made the move. I knew in going there it was the end of my Socceroos career, basically. I had the chat with Holger, who told me, because a couple of boys had already gone just prior to me going. Lucas Neal had gone, Bresciano had gone, and there was a lot of backlash from the fans saying that, this is our national team. We want our players to be playing in the best leagues in the world, not going to some, retirement league, as they'd called it, chasing the money. So there was a big call for, Holger to start making that decision of any player that went there, had to sort of, he was going to have to leave out. So I had that conversation with him. He told me, look, if you go there, it's going to be hard for me to pick you. And I said, look, I understand, and I get that for me to stay in the Socceroos, I need to stay in Japan, but this is something I need to do. And I had, no dramas in making that decision. In the end, I do look back. Ange took over. He took the boys to the World Cup, and they did well, and he did well. But a lot of players were left out of that side. The boys that went through most of qualifying. So look, again, there's no guarantee I would have made it, and even still, I wouldn't change the decision I made. It was one that really helped me and my family. So I'm definitely comfortable in the decision I made. And while the football wasn't great at Al-Ain, and I understood that side of it, I understood a lot of the foreigners and why they went there. It was still very enjoyable, on, off the pitch. But yeah, I think after a couple of years, I needed to come home.
Yeah. And it was that move. It was interesting because you played with Asamoah Gyan, who was there, and he'd made the move from Sunderland. He was playing in the Premier League, scoring goals in the Premier League. Ghana football star, the biggest player they've got, their captain, everything. What was he like on and off the pitch? I've heard he went around with a bit of a posse, and his boys said, let's go. What was he like, I suppose? First of all, we'll go maybe off the pitch, and then what was it like as a footballer? Because talented, obviously. So what could you tell me about him?
Off the pitch, I didn't really see him. He lived on his own with that group of boys that you said that he was always with. And look, I can imagine going there, being thrown the money that was thrown at him, going with your group of mates. There'd be nothing better. I mean, he was definitely living it up, but he lived on his own with his mates. So the foreigners that I did sort of hang around with, the other ones similar to me that had families, young families that were there. We lived in a compound together across the road from the stadium. So I probably mixed a lot more with them, Nadia with them and their kids as well, than I did with Asamoah. But at training, huge character, great bloke, and just an incredible goal scorer. I mean, I know the level wasn't fantastic, but every game he's scoring. The leap that he had, any ball that was in the box was a goal. And we had a good year that first year. We won the league and won it quite comfortably. But man, he was good to play with. He was good to play with. He is one of those who was, about himself and get me the ball and I'm going to score the goals, which at that level, and if you can back it up, you've got to be, those strikers, the best in the world, they're like that, So it was good to see that, but at training, just a laugh and always having a joke. But
was he nice to you? Did he know Uruguayan background, like Suarez handball in the World Cup?
I think he ended up finding out because we sort of spoke about it, and it was a tough moment for him.
Because he missed that penalty.
He missed the penalty, that's right. So it was hard for him to talk about, and one of the worst moments in his career. But on the flip side, the following year we had Fossati, who was a Uruguayan coach who was knocked out by Australia when we went to the World Cup. So he was telling me about that journey.
Anywhere, mate.
Mate, I've gone with exactly right. But look, they were both awesome. I mean, football gives good and bad experiences, right? I think it's part of the journey, and for them to have experienced two of the biggest in Fossati, losing out on making a World Cup and what that did to Uruguay, and how hard that was on him being the coach. Gyan missing a penalty and being knocked out of a World Cup. I mean, they don't come much bigger, but and to share those moments with both of these guys was pretty. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, so a few seasons at Al-Ain, a few trophies, and there's time to come home. How did that move come about with Sydney?
So Arnie had taken over, been signed as the coach, and he just sent me a message. He said, "Mate, because Sydney had gone again through a couple difficult seasons. He said, mate, I'm coming back to Sydney. I'm signing for Sydney. Come back home, help me fix the place." So that was the message I got from him, and I sort of, spoke to him and just said, "Mate, look, my intention. I'm off contract at the moment. I'm just not sure what I'm going to do. I think if I can stay here, obviously that helps me. But mate, if not, I'm Sydney's where I'm coming. I've always made that clear. So I said, look, just leave it with me for a couple of weeks. And the more I thought about it, it just started to feel right. I was being put off by a lot of things in the UAE as well with, that just made it feel right. I mean, in terms of the football, I felt like my performances were just going downhill. I wasn't, really enjoying the game anymore as well. And the lifestyle, while it's a good one, you've got Dubai and Abu Dhabi and they're great places, a great lifestyle. It just, the timing felt right to come home. So I called Arnie and said, mate, I'm coming home, and I signed, and that was it.
And you missed the whole Del Piero, right? Where you were gone, he was there.
Yeah.
Is it true that, I heard rumors that Arnold would only take the job if Del Piero wasn't there? Do you know is any truth behind that or not?
I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I'd never asked or heard about that. But again, knowing Arnie and what he was like, he was always about the team as opposed to any one big player, which is why even in the foreigners that he brought, he never really looked at someone who was going to cause any disruption, which as big as Del Piero was and as great as he was, I mean, the team suffered on the pitch. The ratings went up, crowds went through the roof. So we definitely needed someone like him, but it also needed to be someone that, didn't have his own change room or someone who didn't do his own gym sessions and train at his own times, because that causes a issue in the change room. You almost don't see him as a teammate when those things are happening. So while he was incredible, those sorts of things I think will take its toll, especially for us Australian players. We're not like that at all. We want someone to be one of the boys. We don't. So I think the guys who've come over and have done that and adapted and seen what Australian players are like, they've typically been the ones that have settled and done the best. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if that was a request by Arnie. Then
because there were chats that he had his own fitness coach, his own masseuse, like all these things, and obviously he was very at the back end, and he probably knew what he needed to be able to perform. So you understand there's that give and take that. Yes, you are Del Piero, like you are, what you've done. But if Arnie is how you say he is, and he's about the group collective, I don't think you can have someone
wouldn't have worked that way
on that level. So that makes sense as well. So unbridled success once you come back to the club. You guys were very dominant. A couple of Premiers Plates, Grand Finals, whatever. You do your hamstring, like you mentioned, and there's a story that I want to ask you about. See, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it is true, but we'll get it there. So you were the Australian marquee at the time, I believe. Done your hamstring surgery. You guys have just won it. Great team you've got. And then, obviously, with the salary cap in Australia, it's very difficult to keep everybody. That's why it's so hard to keep a group together. Because if you do well and you have success, those guys who aren't on as much money start getting offers to leave better money. And the story is that Graham Arnold was really quite stressed about having to take you out of that marquee role and fit you under the cap, so he could get other people into the marquee and other people more money and whatnot, and you had to cut your salary. And he said that it was probably one of the worst conversations trying to have. You're really worried about how it's going to go. And your response was along the lines of, give everybody else the money that they need to keep them, and I'll take whatever's left. Is that true? Or along those lines?
Look, along those lines, but again, I feel like at that point in my career, the fact that I'd been given that opportunity to go to Japan and earn better money, and then from there go to the UAE, it gave me that luxury of being able to do that. Now, I do understand that probably not everybody would have, but for me, like I said, from when I was a kid, I always enjoyed playing around the boys that I was happy with, and when the change was good. And we had such an incredible group that, Arnie explaining to me that, we might lose him, we might lose him. I'd rather be playing with these guys and earning a lot less than earning more and not having the same sort of change room and things like that. So, and group that we had, I knew just how important everybody in that team at that period was, So, look, yes, it did happen. It wasn't a difficult conversation with Arnie. It was, from my point of view, I get the stress he probably was thinking, me being captain, how do I tell my captain, mate, I need to cut your wage by this much. But from my point of view, I figured it was coming. I had no problem with it. Again, because of how fortunate I feel like I had been up until that point in terms of what I'd been lucky enough to earn. So it was a no-brainer for me to sort of agree to that and make sure we kept the group that we are.
And I think that's that common theme of the kind of person you are. You're very humble and all those things. And I think that team collective is very important to you. You said it from the start, from being a young kid, it was important for you to have those people around you, have your family, have your friends there, and still doing it to this day. So I think it's a huge credit to you. Not many people would say, yeah, I'll take a pay cut so someone else can have more money or whatever. But maybe because of the career you've had and the opportunities you've had overseas, like you said, weighed into that as well. So I think that's a huge testament to you as a person and as a footballer and as a leader, I suppose, in that captaincy role as well. So, so obviously, like I said, you won a bunch of trophies there. Any that stick out? Like for me, when you guys won in Melbourne, penalty shootout, like that one sticks out to me, but especially for that second stint, any that stick out to you?
Yeah, I think the 16-17 season definitely sticks out. I know winning down in Melbourne was great, but being able to do it here at Al-Ain Stadium, family in the crowd, friends in the crowd, it had been an incredible year as well. That year, the team that Arnie built, it took a couple of years, but he finally sort of had just built an incredible change room and team, and there was this feeling every single game, and it started from pre-season. I remember we played a game against MacArthur. Were you there when you beat us in pre-season?
No.
Okay.
No.
So MacArthur beat us in pre-season, in that pre-season of the 16-17 year. And then we ended up going from there and almost going through the season unbeaten. And we sort of, up until that point, we sort of laughed about that fact. We thought, man, we've gone through a whole season. MacArthur's going to be the only team to hold their hand up and say, hey, we beat them,
Yeah.
So, I mean, we lost the game to the Wanderers in that season in the end, but again, just incredible. There was this feeling going into every single game, not a single worry or thought that today's going to be tough, we're going to lose. It was just like, man, we know our roles inside out. We've got confidence in every single player. We know how we're playing. We're winning today. It's that simple. And we didn't win every game, obviously, but it just felt like we were going to win every single game. So then the pressure going into that grand final to have to win that game. We were at home, and it while we played well and it was a real physical game, Melbourne, the games against them were always physical. It didn't go the way we planned. We were down 1-0. Grant ends up scoring the equalising goal. We go to extra time and then penalties. Weird feeling. I remember, I wasn't one for penalties up until that point, and I remember Arnie sort of telling me, Brosque, you've taken one, and I knew I had to, right? As the captain, I thought I can't say no, right? So I've got to take a penalty, and I said, yep, I'll take one. He goes, right, you're going first. And then I'm just sweating balls the whole time thinking, right, well, he's got to go through his team talk. There's still probably another couple minutes to go. I'm stepping up first. I didn't hear anything he said. I'm not thinking about anything else other than just that walk, And it was a long one. But I think after I made the decision, I was at peace with it, because I think once all the negativity and worry and nerves, I just thought, it is what it is. Whether I score, whether I miss, much bigger players than me have done it on bigger stages, missed, and life goes on, right? So I knew how important it was and how much I wanted to win this game, but I just thought, whatever happens will happen. So it was actually, I felt comfortable and confident, in stepping up to take the penalty, but even still, it wasn't a good one at all. I mean, it always looks okay when the keeper goes the other way. But if he'd gone the right way, I think...
Just for the second where you're hitting on...
Oh, no, exactly.
Oh, no, it's all the same.
If he'd gone the right way, I think he could have stood up, put his foot on the ball. That's how bad it was. But in the end, scored, and I think we missed the first one, as in we were the first ones to miss a penalty. Then they missed, and we got back and we won, and it was an incredible moment. That feeling of winning a grand final at home, your friends and family coming onto the field, and it honestly doesn't, for me anyway, playing for Australia, playing in an Olympics. I mean, that one moment was perfect for me. You know, given how close, like I said, I was with my family, and I am with my family, and that environment, you know, being important to me of a change room, having all of that, you know, the fans, that connection with them, and being able to do it, that moment for me was perfect and my favourite in all my career.
Yeah. And then moving into retirement, how did you know the time was right?
Just because after the following season, the 17-18 season was a difficult one in terms of staying on the pitch and getting my body right from day to day. It was a real grind, you know, and with Clarkie and Arnie there, normally as you get older, you know, there's a lot of luxuries that are afforded to your older players. You know, do you feel like training today? Not really. Give me the day off. With Clarkie, as an older player, you were doing more than the younger ones just because of what it took to keep at that level. So it really just destroyed me physically and then mentally as well. So I was ready at the end of that 17-18 season where we lost to Melbourne in the semi-final to call it quits. And then Arnie, at the back end of that season, he'd made the decision to sign on with the Socceroos, and Corica was going to be taking the side from there. Allianz was getting destroyed and rebuilt. So there was a lot of things happening in that off season where I thought, you know what, I don't want to end like this. I want to come back for a number of reasons. I feel like as well, there was a lot being said that with Arnie leaving, the ship was going to sink, you know, that he'd sort of built everything to that point and it was going to go downhill from there. And I felt, in a way, the boys were being disrespected with those comments, you know, where I thought, hold on, I think what Arnie's done here is incredible and he is the reason we've had the success we've had. But the players have played their part without a doubt, right? I mean, at the end of the day, getting to that grand final, that penalty shootout, everything that Arnie's done stops there, right? It's on us to carry that on. And as much as we needed him, and he picked the right players, he needed us to do what we did. So I felt like it was such a combined effort that the comments that were coming out, I didn't sit all that well with me. So I thought, you know what, Coric is a new manager. I've known him since my time, the beginning of my time with Sydney. I want this to go well for him as well. So I stayed on for another year. But again, everything that I'd been feeling in that last year just amplified into that second year and made it so much difficult that in the end, the decision to finish physically and mentally were right for me.
Yeah. And now you're going into the media. Was that always the plan? Because they would see you on TV and you get interviewed after the game or whatever. You always spoke really well, like you are now, really coherent, easy to understand, and a very straight shooter as well. Was that always the plan to do something like that, or was it something maybe later, or was it something you just fell into?
It was something I fell into. I had no plan to get into the media. I felt as I got older and being made captain, I did start to feel more and more comfortable, you know, with a microphone in front of me and in front of a camera. But I wanted to have a year off completely from football. I wanted to step away and just enjoy weekends, being with the family, not having to go away anymore, and all of that. And it was, Fox Sports at the time who approached me and just said, look, we're looking for someone fresh out of the game, someone who's been around for a while, you know, someone that people still know, obviously with you being recently retired, who can come in and do it and give a bit of insight into the current group of players and all of that. So it sort of just, I said, I don't mind the idea of doing it. I think it's important as well to stay involved in the game in some capacity. I said, but look, I want to do it once every couple of weeks, you know, I don't want this to be something I'm doing as regular as all the other guys. You know, I want my weekends. I want that time to the family. So they were very flexible and open to me doing it under my terms, which was that way. That allowed me to sort of grow into that role as well, slowly. So it was something that I fell into initially. I've enjoyed doing ever since.
Yeah, and it's something, like you said, you've been building into it. You're in the studio, you're at the games, you're doing a bit more each week. A couple of weeks ago, you told me a story about a live cross that you did, which is something that you hadn't done before. Can you tell me about that learning experience?
Oh, man. I'm happy to share it. I mean, it's there for everyone to see. Whoever was there watching the 5 o'clock news. So I went down to Melbourne. Normally I get to some games, like the big Saturday night games, I get there early and do a live news cross. But with someone who is experienced in asking the questions, you know, a Tristan McManus or a Scotty McKinnon, these guys that do that sort of stuff easily. Anyway, so I got down to Melbourne. I was doing the Melbourne-Sydney game, and it was okay. So me and Archie were supposed to go down. So I thought, all right, that's interesting. They're going to have two of us doing a news cross. So what? Just a quick question each, and they're like, no, it's just you two. I said, okay. So who were they throwing down to? So obviously the reporter here in Sydney will do her thing and throw down to one of us. I thought it'd be Archie because Archie's done all that. He does the stuff with the Grand Prix and he's good, right? They said, no, look, we'll come down to you. You just off the top of that because we'll be talking about Sydney wanting to get revenge from round one. So you just say, yep, whatever you got to say, and then have a comment on the game, throw to Archie, bring him in. He'll step in to focus and have a question to him. Then say one more thing and throw back to studio. We're looking forward to tonight. Can't wait.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, fine. I've never done this before, but, how hard can it be? So I had it prepared in my head what I was going to say, and that's always the worst. As much as I like to be prepared, and I'm not great with off-the-cuff sort of stuff, I like to at least have a note or two there that I can go to. I'm terrible when it comes to rehearsing something and then having to say it, but I thought I'll be fine. And anyway, so the news reporters come down to me with a comment, and I've just mixed my words completely and completely messed it up from the very beginning. Didn't know where I was going. So I'm just staring at the screen and not knowing where to go, and thought, anyway, I've got Archie with me and brought him into it. And I don't think I did that well bringing him in because the question I was supposed to ask, I didn't ask. So then Archie cracked a joke about, them leaving us to do a news class, which was never going to end well. And I've gone back to her and I just remember thinking that was the worst 90 seconds, I think, of TV possibly. So I hope you don't find it and play it, mate, because I know you're going to play one of my bad misses, which could definitely have gone on this video, but that would be much worse.
Yeah, I don't know.
Much worse.
The sitter or she tried to do a live cross with Archie. All right, so we are nearly done. I got 3 questions that I did prep you for.
Yeah.
So the first one was dinner with any 3 people that are alive. Who would you bring over?
All right, let me have a quick look. I had a couple, right? So I'm thinking, do I go one of I'm going to go a football player,
yep.
Right? And this is to liven the table up, Okay. Does this dinner end up kicking on? Do we end up going, because I feel like you need to have a Brazilian in there potentially because they're good for a night out. So I'd either go the OG Ronaldo or a Maradona. Yep. Both of those guys would bring some laughs to the table, incredible stories, and allow you to kick on in a good way after that.
They know where to go after.
Exactly. So from there, I was thinking, do I go with an actor? Do I go with someone with a brilliant mind? So I've got a couple. I mean, do I have to go 3 or can I throw it? All right. It's a big table. Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking someone like, I went to see Dave Chappelle recently, and incredible. I'd seen a lot of his stuff before. I mean, a favorite comedian of mine is Arj Barker, right? I love the way he tells his stories and he's brilliant. But seeing Dave Chappelle and just everything about him, that aura when he comes in and just the anticipation, he is the greatest, right? And man, to get to see him live, I thought incredible bloke, incredible way of doing what he does. So I think he'll bring obviously some laughs to the table.
Yeah.
And then actors, musicians, I thought DiCaprio is a big name. Just one of those guys in the public eye who's always got that mystique about him. No one really ever knows what he's thinking, what he's doing. Awesome guy, awesome actor. So probably him and Michael Jackson, who's obviously had his issues. So you steer clear of those comments, but an incredible genius as well in his own right. And that's probably it. I mean, one of the other brilliant minds of our generation, Elon Musk, and just he's an odd character, right? But
how do you think he'd go sitting next to Diego? And
it'd be an odd mix, I think, that dynamic. But again, a good night out in the end.
I think so. I think you'd be mediating that conversation and just throwing everyone.
Yeah.
I think you'd learn a lot. You'd probably laugh a lot.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it'd be a good party. So now I'm going to go into the best 5 players that you've played with.
Okay.
In terms of shape, just goalkeeper, and then you can do what you want.
Okay. And I've gone more with that I've enjoyed playing with,
Yes.
as opposed to, and this is no disrespect to any of them in saying the best players, but yeah, with in goal, I would go with Nichevsky. I roomed with him for a number of years, and a great bloke. So I'd have him in goals, and a couple other of my roomies there. I mentioned them already. So Bridgie one, Terry McFlynn another. Am I in this 5, or can I sit on the bench? Okay.
You're on the bench.
Okay, so that's 3. I'd have David Carney as well, a guy who I have known since I was 12. Year 7, we've had careers together, played together, laughed together, are still so close. And one of my great friends, I'd have him in there. And then for my 5th, it would be probably either Juninho or Michel Bastos. Played with him in Al-Ain. And he was one, when you talk about on and off the pitch, mate, just as good off the pitch as he is on the pitch.
Yep.
He's in terms of a night out. I mean, he was, mate, fantastic. Always up for a good time and a great character. Great player, had an incredible left peg on him. And Juninho with the quality. So I'm sort of rotating. I'll rotate between there. Yeah, I'll sit with one. Exactly.
Fair enough. You sit with the clipboard, let them enjoy it.
Exactly.
Lovely. All right, and then can we get on to your best 5 you played against?
Okay. I went quick. I may be missing 1 or 2 in here. Like we mentioned earlier, played some good friendly games against some big clubs around the world. So I would say I'll put Peter Cech in goal, who was goalkeeper of Chelsea, and to be fair, a very, very good goalkeeper. I'm going to go David Beckham off the back of that LA Galaxy game. Incredible player. Steven Gerrard, the end of his career, but still a big name. Eden Hazard, he was in his prime at Chelsea, and man, just an absolute freak. Being on the same pitch and seeing how hard he is to mark, and even though you send 2-3 players, he's scanning the pitch, he knows where everybody is, and good enough to beat all 3 of those players that are coming at him and then play the pass he's got to play. He was incredible. So him, and then probably playing against Tottenham, either a Harry Kane or that Argentina side, Carlos Tevez. I think playing him, in the Olympics when he was an absolute gun, and just seeing how good he was. The rest of these blokes played in a friendly, right? So you never really see and appreciate how good they are, as big as they are. But Tevez was one who just had that incredible quality about him, and Harry Kane is Harry Kane. So it's a good couple players.
What's the score if those 2 sides face off?
Oh, is it a 5-a-side game?
5-a-side,
right?
15 and a half.
So we're bunkering up. We're leaving Juninho and Bastos to do some attacking. It's a very heavily one-sided game. To be fair, indoor, right? I mean, Beckham can't play his balls. Harry Kane, he can score from anywhere, but I think we get smashed.
Yeah,
we get smashed.
Fair call. Well, that brings us to the end. Al, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. I hope everybody enjoys the episode. Like I said, I can't thank you enough for being here, and thanks for being so honest and open. And like I said, I hope everyone enjoys it. So, mate,
appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much.
I love it. Thanks, mate.
There you have it, football fans. Part B, the away leg of our chat with former Socceroo and Sydney FC legend Alex Brosque is done. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, make sure you subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. Give us a follow on Instagram. Make sure you like, share, and comment on our content. And thanks so much for choosing to score some goals with us here. And as always, make sure you celebrate with the corner flag.